April 6, 1866, Savannah, Georgia, a 22-year-old walks into a bank and a clerk asks him questions no white institution had ever asked a black man in this country. Where were you born? Who was your mother? Who was your father? And then, who owned you? The young man answers, and the clerk writes every word down in a ledger. That ledger still exists. There are nearly 480,000 entries like it, and they hold something no census, no gravestone, no family Bible in America can give you: the name of the person who owned your ancestor. This is a countdown of 17 surnames pulled from the ledgers of the Freedman's Savings Bank, counting from 17 to 1. And I have to be honest with you about the list before I start it, because it is not what these countdowns usually are. There is no ranking of the most common Freedman's Bank surnames, and I would not trust one if it existed. What there is instead is a set of 70,000 real depositor across 37 branches. And I have chosen 17 whose entries are documented and verifiable, some famous, most not, to show you the full range of what these books captured. The point of this list is the opposite of the others. It is not that these 17 names are special, it is that the same questions were asked of everybody, which means the odds are very good that one of these books is holding a name you have been looking for your whole life. But first you have to understand what this bank was and why its collapse is one of the great crimes of American history. Picture a bank that does not lend money, it only holds it. Congress chartered the Freedman Savings and Trust Company on March 3, 1865, the same session, almost the same week, that created the Freedmen's Bureau. And its purpose was to give newly freed people somewhere safe to put the first wages they had ever legally earned. Union paymasters had been handing black soldiers cash, many for the first time in their lives, and that money needed a home. It grew explosively. 37 branches in 17 states and Washington, D.C., over 70,000 depositors. At its height, it held roughly 80 million of today's dollars, in accounts mostly $5 to $50 each. The savings of laborers, laundresses, blacksmiths, and soldiers built a nickel at a time. Then the men running it at the top, white trustees and financiers the depositors never saw, gambled the money on railroad speculation and unsecured loans to their own friends. When the panic of 1873 hit, it came apart. In a last effort to save it, the trustees installed a new president in March 1874, Frederick Douglass. Douglass put $10,000 of his own money into the bank to steady it. Then he opened the books, saw what had been done, and said he had been married to a corpse. He told Congress to shut it down. On June 29, 1874, the Freedmen's Bank closed, and tens of thousands of families lost most of what they had saved. Many never got a cent back. The money was stolen, but the questionnaire survived, and that is the bitter, extraordinary irony of this record. The thing that ruined those families is now the thing that can give their descendants back their names. 17 surnames. Here is number 17. Number 17, Riley, the young man in Savannah. Jacob Riley was 22 years old, and he had served in Company B of the 33rd United States Colored Troops. He opened his account on April 6, 1866. He was living in Screven County, Georgia, at the time, but the ledger records that he was born in Augusta, and it records the name of the man who had owned him there, Josiah Sibley. Stop and see what just happened. In one line, in one bank register, a formerly enslaved soldier is connected to his birthplace and to his enslaver by name. That is the entire brick wall of black genealogy broken in a single entry because a clerk asked a question and wrote down the answer while the man who had been owned stood there and watched him do it. Number 16, Carpenter. Not every depositor was formerly enslaved, and Mary Ann Carpenter's entry proves it. She was 37, married to a man named Thomas Carpenter, and she lived on Leroy Street. She had no listed occupation. What the ledger captured instead was her family. Her father was Joseph Berry. Her mother was Harriet Thompson, and she named a brother and 5 children in the record. She had lived in the United States since she was 11. In one bank form, 3 generations of a family, parents, depositor, children, are fixed in place on a single date. That is what these books do. They freeze a whole family in a moment, at a level of detail the census never attempted. Number 15. Hammonds. The ledgers did not only hold individuals. In 1873, at the Augusta, Georgia branch, an account was opened in the name of the Spirit Creek Baptist Church Building Trust Fund. The man listed first among his trustees was Deacon Ben Hammonds, alongside John Ward, Philip Maynard, Daniel Horton, William Hampton, Henry Johnson, and Frank Beals. 7 black men, named together, pooling money to build a church 8 years after slavery ended. 6 surnames in one entry. And if your family attended a black church founded in the Reconstruction South, its building fund may be sitting in these registers and the founding deacons' names with it. The bank did not just record people, it recorded the institutions they built the moment they were free to build them. Number 14. Purvis. Charles Burley. Purvis was one of the black leaders tied to the bank's operation in Washington, and his family tells you who was in this fight. He was a physician, one of the first black doctors in the country to hold a hospital post, and he served on the board connected to the bank's D.C. affairs. His father, Robert Purvis, had been one of the wealthiest black abolitionists in America and a founder of the American Anti-Slavery Society. Understand what the bank represented to men like this. It was not charity. It was economic citizenship, proof that free black families could accumulate, hold, and pass down wealth like anyone else. That is exactly why its sabotage cut so deep. It was designed to prove a point, and its collapse was weaponized to prove the opposite. Number 13. Langston. John Mercer Langston was one of the most accomplished black men of the 19th century, a lawyer, a diplomat, the founding dean of the Howard University Law School, and eventually a congressman from Virginia. He was among the prominent figures associated with the bank during its life, and a century later, his own great-nephew, the poet Langston Hughes, would carry that same surname into the Harlem Renaissance. The name runs from a Reconstruction bank ledger straight through to some of the most famous American poetry of the 20th century. When you find a surname in these books, you are not finding an endpoint. You are finding a link in a chain that often runs all the way to someone you already know. Number 12. Lubin. Ellen Baptiste. Lubin was a depositor at the New Orleans branch, and her name matters because Louisiana matters. The historian Justine Hill Edwards, whose recent book on the bank won the Frederick Douglass Prize, uses depositors like Lubin to show how much of the bank's money came from ordinary black Louisianians. Many of them people who had worked plantations under federal control during the war through General Nathaniel Banks's Free Labor Bank, which was folded into the Freedman system. The Louisiana registers carry French and Creole surnames you will not find anywhere else in this record because they carry a population, free people of color and freed people together, whose history runs on a completely different track from the English name South. Number 11. Finch. The Reverend William Finch opened an account, and his entry is a portrait. He gave his profession as tailor. The form recorded his physical description, his parents, his children, and his siblings. And 4 years into freedom, in 1870, William Finch became one of the first 2 black men elected to the Atlanta City Council. So here is a man whose family you can reconstruct from a bank form, who was cutting cloth for a living and legislating for a city in the same decade his people came out of bondage. The ledger caught him in the middle of that rise, the tailor's trade and the councilman's future sitting in the same set of answers. Number 10. Smalls. If you want to understand what these depositors were capable of, you start with Robert Smalls. In May 1862, still enslaved, Smalls was forced to work as a wheelman on a Confederate steamer called the Planter in Charleston Harbor. One night, while the white officers were ashore, he put on the captain's hat, sailed the ship past 5 Confederate checkpoints, giving the correct signals at each one, picked up his family, and delivered the vessel to the Union blockade. He handed the United States Navy a Confederate warship. He opened a Freedman's Bank depositor account at Beaufort, South Carolina in 1870, and by then he was on his way to the United States Congress, where he served 5 terms. His depositor application survives. The man who stole a warship out of slavery has his signature in these books. Quick thing, then straight back. If your surname has already come up, or if you are 10 deep and still waiting, subscribe now, because the last few names on this list carry the whole meaning of the record. And right after number 1, I'm going to walk you through exactly how to search these ledgers for your own family. It is free, and most people have never been told it exists. Number 9. Number 9. Davis. Nelson Davis was a formerly enslaved man who had served in the 8th United States Colored Troops. After the war, he boarded at a house in Auburn, New York, run by a woman who had escaped slavery in Maryland. And in 1869, he married her. Her name before that marriage had run through Ross and Tubman. She was Harriet Tubman. Nelson Davis's military and pension paperwork became, decades later, part of how Tubman herself finally secured a government pension. The surname Davis is one of the most common in Black America precisely because it was one of the most common among enslavers, which means it fills these ledgers. And every single Davis entry is a separate family with a separate former owner. Common names are not dead ends here. Each one is its own door. Number 8, Butler. Benjamin Butler was the Union general who, in 1861, refused to return 3 escaped enslaved men to the Confederacy, declaring them contraband of war and cracking open the whole question of what emancipation would mean. He later established one of the military savings banks at Norfolk, Virginia, that were folded directly into the Freedman's Bank at its founding. So the surname Butler sits in this record twice over, as the name of enslavers whose formerly held people carried it into the ledgers, and as the name of the general whose Norfolk Bank became one of the system's founding branches. The Norfolk Register is one of the oldest in the entire collection, dating to June 1865. Number 7. Banks. General Nathaniel Banks ran the Union's labor system in occupied Louisiana and created the Free Labor Bank, which held the wages of thousands of Black soldiers and plantation workers before being absorbed into the Freedman system. Thousands of Louisianians passed through registers bearing that structure. But here is the honest caution the name forces, and I'm going to keep saying it. A Black family named Banks in the ledgers is far more likely to have taken the name from an enslaver named Banks than from the general. The surname in the book is a starting point. It tells you which register to open. It does not tell you the story. Only the full entry, the parents, the birthplace, the former owner tells you the story. Number 6, Lincoln. The bank was chartered by an act that Abraham Lincoln signed on March 3, 1865. One of the last things he did, he was assassinated 5 weeks later. So Lincoln's name is on the Jurai founding law of this institution. And the surname Lincoln appears among depositors too, carried by freed people who chose it, though as I have said before, far fewer than you would expect. What the Lincoln thread really marks here is timing. This bank was born in the same 6-week window as the end of the war, the end of slavery, and the death of the president. It was a Reconstruction institution in the purest sense, and it died, not by accident, as Reconstruction itself was being dismantled around it. Number 5, Alvord. John Alvord was the bank's first president and its true believer, a white minister and Freedmen's Bureau official who genuinely thought the institution would build Black wealth and who traveled the South urging freed people to trust it. His name is on the reports and the appeals that brought 70,000 people through the doors. I include him deliberately because the honest history of this bank requires it. The depositor's faith was real, and it was earned by real promises made by men like Albert, and then it was betrayed by the men above him who controlled the investments. The tragedy only lands if you understand that the trust was reasonable. These were not naive people. They were lied to by an institution wearing the flag. Number 4, Cook. This is the name most of the depositors never knew, and the one that ruined them. Henry Cook, with his brother Jay Cook, controlled the financial house at the center of the bank's collapse. The Cooks and their circle steered the depositors' savings into the Northern Pacific Railroad and other speculative ventures that served the financiers, not the freed people. When Jay Cook's banking empire failed in September 1873, it helped trigger the national panic that finished the Freedman's Bank off. I put this name on the list on purpose. A roll call of the surnames in these ledgers that named only the depositors and never the men who lost their money for them will be a lie by omission. The Cooks are in this history. They belong in the count. Number 3, Howard, Oliver Otis. Howard was the Union general who ran the Freedmen's Bureau, the federal agency that worked hand in glove with the bank. Bureau agents and school teachers actively steered free people to open accounts. His name is also on Howard University, the institution he helped found, which stands today. The Howard thread is the reminder that this bank did not operate alone. It was one arm of a brief, serious federal attempt to build a foundation under 4 million newly free people, schools, hospitals, labor contracts, marriage registration, and savings, all at once. That whole apparatus is why the paper trail from this exact window, roughly 1865 to 1872, is richer than any other period in 19th century black history. Number 2, Sibley. Go back to the very first name on this list. Jacob Riley, the young soldier in Savannah, told the clerk that the man who had owned him in Augusta was Josiah Sibley. So Sibley is here not as a depositor, but as a name pulled out of a depositor's own testimony, the enslaver named by the formerly enslaved in the formerly enslaved man's own account. This is the field that makes these ledgers unlike almost any other record in America. On the early forms, there was a line for the former master or mistress and a line for the plantation. When those lines are filled in, a black family separated from its history by the deliberate namelessness of slavery gets handed the one piece of information that lets them cross into the world of wills, deeds, and estate papers, where enslaved people were agonizingly recorded as property and therefore recorded at all. Number 1, Douglas. It has to be him. Frederick Douglass was born enslaved on Maryland's eastern shore, escaped in 1838, and became the most famous black man in America. He did not need this bank. He was asked to take it over precisely because his name meant trust, because 70,000 people believed in Frederick Douglass even after they had stopped believing in the institution. And he honored that. He put his own $10,000 on the line to try to save the depositors' money. And when he understood it could not be saved, he refused to keep the illusion going. And he told Congress the truth. His name presides over the end of this bank, the way the depositors' names fill its beginning. And the meaning of the whole record lies in the gap between them. 70,000 ordinary people who trusted the promise, and the one man famous enough to be handed the wreckage after the powerful had already emptied it out. Now the science. Because people always ask whether a DNA test can do what these ledgers do. It can do something they cannot, and it cannot do the main thing they can. Here's the difference. When two living people share long, identical stretches of DNA, geneticists call it identity by descent. The segments match because they came from the same ancestor. That is how autosomal cousin matching works, and for Black American families, it has a specific power. Because European ancestry entered overwhelmingly through the male line under slavery. A study in the journal Human Genetics measuring 93 black men found European ancestry highest on the Y chromosome, near 28.5% against about 20% across the rest of the genome. Many black families today carry documented DNA matches to the descendants of the families who enslaved their ancestors. A match can hand you a surname to investigate. And now the honest word, because this channel does not deal in wishful thinking. A DNA match cannot tell you it was your third great-grandfather, or when, or in which side of the ownership line he stood. It gives you a name to test against the paper. It is the ledger that proves the link, because the ledger has your ancestor saying in a specific place on a specific date who their mother was and who owned them. DNA points, documents prove. And on this record specifically, the surname is the least of it. A name in these books is only a lead until you open the full entry and read the parents, the birthplace, and the former owner. That is where your family actually is. So here is exactly how to search it, and it is free. Go to FamilySearch.org, make a free account, and search the collection called United States, Freedman's Bank Records. 1865 to 1874. It is fully indexed and it is free. You do not need the paid sites for this one. Search your surname. Then, and this is the part most people miss, search the surnames of every branch city your family lived near. Richmond, Norfolk, Charleston, Beaufort, Savannah, Augusta, Mobile, New Orleans, Memphis, Nashville, Louisville, Vicksburg, Washington. The registers are organized by branch, so the city is your key. When you find an entry, do not stop at the name. Read every field. The parents and siblings can jump you back another whole generation in one step. And if the former owner line is filled in, write that name down and take it straight to the county courthouse records and the 1860 slave schedule for that county, because that enslaver's will and estate inventory is very likely where your ancestor was recorded as property by first name before this bank ever existed. Tell me in the comments which surname and which branch city. Name the city, because in this record, the branch is what turns a common surname into your specific family. And if you get an entry with the former owner line filled in, the single most valuable line in this entire archive, put that in the comments too. Next video, we take one of those filled in lines and follow it backward out of the bank ledger into a slaveholder's will, and we find the enslaved family named inside it. That is how the wall actually comes down. Wait until you see how far back one line can take you.